This is TLV1.
TLV1 Radio.
Great mixture.
I like Tel Aviv.
This is still V1.
This is
Tel Aviv is a beautiful city.
Great city, great radio.
TLV1.
This is TLV1.
Journeys with Rogel Alpher.
Hi, this is TLV1 broadcasting from Tel Aviv on TLV1.fm, and you're listening to Journeys, a program dedicated to hearing the stories of people who have journeyed to Israel. And our guest today is 44-year-old Dr. Eli Gottlieb, originally from London. Hello, Dr. Gottlieb.
Hi, Rogel.
Thanks for coming, and you are the director of the Mandel Leadership Institute in Jerusalem, and also you have time to be a research psychologist, and also you're married and you have 4 kids. So, what can I say? An impressive start, I think. So before we start hearing your story, we're going to hear the first of a couple of songs that you've selected at our request that have some special meaning or significance for you in your life. The first of which is Surrender, and the singer is Elvis. So you want to say a few words about it, why you chose it?
Well, first of all, if you're going to listen to music, you might as well start with The King. But the main thing about this particular record is that Elvis is always on the borderline between unbelievable talent and kitsch.
Okay, right. Yes, that's true.
And he manages to pull it off every time. You can give him the worst material in the world and he'll make it sound cool. This is one of those songs which he manages to keep within the boundaries and sounds amazing every time.
Now, I'm not at all very good with Elvis sort of history and so on. There's one very extremely kitschy song where he bursts out laughing. He can't take the kitsch himself.
I'm not
this
sure
the one? I don't
this
think
isn't the one.
It.
This is one which he stays so within the boundaries. It's unbelievably cool.
Okay.
But I think if you gave it to anybody else to perform, it would be a disaster.
Okay, let's hear it. Okay, I didn't know this song. My personal take on it is, first of all, now I know where the James Bond theme, the movie theme, was stolen from. Obviously from here, right? And I think he sounds less macho than usual, right?
He's more macho in the verses and kind of more feminine in the chorus.
Yeah, there's a sort of very feminine side to him that sort of comes out here. Okay, so tell me, what is the Mandel Leadership Institute? What is it that you guys do there?
Well, it's actually quite simple. We seek out outstanding individuals who want to contribute to make Israeli society better, and we bring them in and give them time and space and people to think with.
Okay, now I know you've studied. You have at least an MA in philosophy, right?
I have an MA in philosophy. That's right.
Okay, so you have a number of concepts here that we need to sort of delve into. Well, what does it mean to make Israeli society better? Because a lot of different groups in Israel have a very different view. As one person's better is another person's worse. And so, do you have? Obviously, you have to be ideological in some sense. Otherwise, I mean, every time you choose someone and say you're going to make society better, someone can stand up and say you've just made it a lot worse.
Right. So that's actually one of the unusual things about our institute. We don't have a very specific, clear ideology of this is the way to make Israeli society better. We have a few pointers of things which are important for any leader to think about, but the kinds of people we bring together come from all walks of Israeli life. So you could have Arabs, Jews, settlers, left-wing people who object to the settlements, all sitting in the same cohort.
So what you're saying is this: if you're bringing someone who has a very, for instance, right-wing point of view and believes strongly that Israel should annex the West Bank, and he lives in a settlement, and you're teaching him how to, be a leader for that part of Israeli society, then in your view, you've made Israeli society better?
Well,
so I'm having difficulty understanding.
Well, there's two things that we want to do. First of all, we want that person to be extremely clear in their own mind about what their values are that are leading them to that position. But second of all, we want them
Well,
to
for
be...
him, he's just being a good whatever he thinks
Right.
he is.
That's
Israeli, Zionist, Jew, God-fearing person.
That's stage one, is to really know yourself well.
He knows himself well.
The other thing is that we believe that by bringing them into contact with two things. First, other people who have opposing views. And second of all, classical, philosophical, and Jewish humanistic texts. These people will be forced, whoever they are, it could be a left-wing person or a right-wing person, to really think about their responsibilities not only to their own interest group, but to Israeli society at large. Everyone who considers themselves a leader, and in particular an educational leader, has the responsibility to think beyond the confines of their particular neighborhood.
Well, what does it mean to be an educational leader, and how do you give your, what do you call them? Your Mandel what? Fellows?
Fellows,
So
that's right.
They get a fellowship?
That's right.
How long is the program?
So we have a variety of programs. Our major program, which is our biggest investment, we select out of hundreds of applicants each year, 20 fellows. These are people at mid-career. Generally, I think the average age this year is 38 and a few months.
Okay.
These are people who already got some experience leading, doing things, being entrepreneurs, leading organizations. And over the course of 2 years, where they stopped doing every other thing that they were involved in up to that point, they focus really on three areas. One is really defining their vision in the ways that I just described earlier. Second of all is working on their personal and professional identity, who they are, what are the values that are motivating them to do what they do.
But this all sounds like they all they have to do is do a lot of meditating. I'm just, don't bother me now. I'm thinking about my vision. I'm thinking about who I am. What is it exactly that they do when you grant them a fellowship, meaning you sustain them financially and their families for that period of time, which is a pretty long period of time, of 2 years.
Yeah.
So every day they come to the Institute in Jerusalem and do what?
So their time is divided really in two main chunks. Half of the week, approximately, they come to Jerusalem and they spend time in classes studying things like the education system, educational change, philosophy, policy studies, how do things get changed from government decisions to how they're implemented in practice.
Okay.
So that's part of their curriculum that they study together. But on the other hand, each one of them is working on an individual project. And for that project, each one of them receives an individual tutor. And so the rest of the time when they're not in the building, they're working on that stuff in libraries, in institutions, going out into the world, interviewing people, learning about initiatives that have succeeded and failed in their area, and becoming more expert. So in addition to all of this stuff that sounds kind of abstract, like working on their vision and working on their personal and professional identity, there is a big chunk of our work which is devoted to the arts of practice, really learning how does change get made in big, messy systems like those which are running our education in this country.
Now, you said that you seek these people out, but really they apply to you, right? I mean, how do you seek them out? You don't...
Well, first of all, we now have a community of graduates that's
no
out
one
there.
Gets a phone call that says, we want you. I mean,
Well,
it doesn't work that way.
Well,
we've been observing you for some time. So.
Well, some of that does happen for some of our programs.
How? I mean, how do you seek these people out?
We now have, I think it's 340 graduates of this particular program that I'm talking about who are out there in the field, from working in government to heading educational organizations, to being principals of schools or heading local education authorities. And each year we send out an email reminder to them to say, send us really good people. So that's one of the ways in which people get tapped on the shoulder. It's a network.
Mandel network.
But the other thing is that because Israel is such a small country, within 20 years we've just recruited our 23rd cohort. Word is out. And so even though we're not that known in society at large, within the education and welfare community, we're quite well known as a place you want to get invited to apply to.
Okay, and you believe that that the program has already influenced Israeli society? I mean,
yeah. Well, we have.
So yeah, okay. So we'll talk about that after we hear the next song you chose, which is the Beatles. I think you chose Two of Us.
That's right.
An unusual choice. Tell us about your connection to this song.
Well, I'm a huge Beatles fan. In fact, since I was a teenager, not just in terms of the music, but in terms of the whole story and who they are, and I follow them to this day. One of the most fascinating things about them, and this really interests me as a psychologist and very much as an organizational leader, is the fact that in the Beatles they managed to combine such opposites who you would have thought would never be able to get along and certainly would never be able to create together. And they succeeded in doing things together that they could never do alone.
Who are the opposites here, like Paul?
I'm talking about Paul and John in particular.
Well, you know, when people take massive amounts of drugs, usually they're more amenable to sort of getting along in different ways.
In this case, it may have actually driven them apart. But why I chose this song is this is at a period of their career where they're barely talking to each other.
Right.
And yet, the music that they're making together and the sentiments of the song are all about togetherness.
We have to talk about drugs later on. Okay. What are the origins of the Mandel Foundation? Is there like a Mr. and Mrs. Mandel who were very rich and said, "Oh, we have to found something," and so that's
yeah,
sort of
there indeed are to this day a Mr. and Mrs. Mandel.
Oh, okay. Good.
In fact, you may have seen a picture of Mr. Mandel. He's currently in the bestseller list in Yediot Achronot. His book, which was in English called "It's All About Who," and in Hebrew is called Hasod Tamun Ba'anashim,
Okay.
is a huge bestseller in this country.
Wow. Okay.
It's actually a foundation that's beyond the Mr. and Mrs. Mandel, who are the chair and CEO, Mr. Morton Mandel, who's, I think, 92.
He wrote the book.
He wrote the book in the last couple of years. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
It's a really good book. Recommended.
Okay.
And his wife is also on the board, Barbara Mandel. She's very active here in Israel and also on the Hebrew University's board. But the foundation itself was founded, I think, as late as way back as the 50s. Probably even before that Elvis song was recorded,
Right.
by Morton, Jack, and Joseph Mandel, three brothers who went into business together and also went into philanthropy together.
And they wanted to influence Israeli society in some sort of, way for the better and so on.
Yeah, they have really, I would say, three main areas of activity. One is in the local community. They're from Cleveland, Ohio, and so they've contributed a lot.
So they don't have a lot to do there. So.